and a practitioner. The issue here is nobody told them anything at the gate when they prayed. It had to do with their behavior on the airplane, number one. Number two, you have to exert some prudence when you're in an open society like America. You know, in my medical office, I don't pray in my waiting room. I pray in my back office. So there's some prudence in that you don't push your acts of worship and your daily activities of your own personal faith upon other people, because we have such a tolerant society.
We had some of the imams on this program on Fox 10 Newsmaker Sunday, along with Deidre Aboud from CARE, the Council for American Islamic Relations. This is some sound after the imams were kicked off the flight. Take a listen.
The worst moment in my life. It's the taste of this moment. I cannot forget it in my life. This is terrible.
We're conducting our own investigation to see what, talking to flight attendants, talking to pilots, talking to people on the ground, talking to local law enforcement, and making sure that we're getting the right information, good information.
What do you make of some of these comments?
It's embarrassing to me that somebody who, granted, he was a victim of ignorance. There were probably things that were said about the prayer, etc. They're speaking Arabic that were just people who don't understand Islam. But to say that's the worst moment of his life, you know what? The worst moment of my life is Osama bin Laden and what he does and what he says on videotape. The worst moment of my life was when Daniel Pearl was beheaded. That is the worst moment of my life. To say that just because he was taken off an airplane. My first name is Muhammad, and I'm used to getting pulled off sometimes. I'm delayed in my travel. Is it frustrating? Absolutely. Do I think it's fair? No. But am I willing to accept it right now? Because I know that I'm not going to be an apologist for terrorists and say that I accept the fact that there are people within my global Muslim community that are acting like barbaric animals that are using the name of my faith, and I have to accept that until we're able to eradicate them.
Why are we not hearing this kind of strong language from the mosques?
Well, again, the mosques, I believe in the separation of mosque and politics, so, you know, I'm not sure that that would be where you'd hear this type of language. Certainly, the condemnation of suicide bombing, the condemnation of terror should come from the mosques. And
is that essential? Is that essential if we're to stop this insanity?
Absolutely. I think that it is essential to take the video, for example, where Osama bin Laden takes my own scripture, our scripture, and uses it in psychopathic ways, and to give it back to him and say, this is what it really means. This is not what that means. Your interpretation is wrong. Our Quranic scripture is holy. It does talk about just war, but we are citizens of America and we're loyal to our citizenship oath, and this is not what it means. And they have to turn it upside down. But unfortunately, John, there's denial. It's like anybody with if you talk about substance abuse or any problem, the first step is denial, and that most Muslims say, oh, these aren't Muslims, they're not really, you know, they don't really know their faith, so we're not, why do we have to account for it? And I'll give you an example. Naveen Haq, who was a psychopath in Seattle, certainly was crazy, but when he got crazy and decided to act out, he went into the Jewish Federation and shot 7 people and killed 1. Now, Muslims will say, well, he was converting and he really didn't know what was going on, he was just crazy. Well, truly just random acts of violence, he would have gone into any restaurant, any place of business and done a random act. He didn't do a random act. He went into a Jewish federation, complained about American foreign policy, and complained about the Zionist conspiracy, all these kind of things. He's getting that from regular mosques. He's getting that from the mixture of politics and religion that is that toxic, that seed of toxicity that ends up, when heard by that mind in the mosque that's crazy, becomes a match.
Do you hear from other Muslims, do they, and I'm going to use a term from the American experience, the African-American experience, that you're an Uncle Tom, you're not a real Muslim, you're a phony? I mean, do you get this kind of talk?
It's amazing to me that when we had our press release saying that not all Muslims agreed with this lawsuit, I've gotten emails from all over the world from some Muslims saying that, oh, I'm breaking up the community. There's an Arabic word actually for dissidents in the religion called that you cause a fitna, which is a division or an imposition into the community. And, you know, the point here is that that's what makes us better. That's what gives us credibility, is to show that there is division, to show that Islam is not monolithic, to show that we are able to accept disagreement, and that my Muslim identity is not related to my politics, it's related to my personal relationship with God.
One more point with the imams and we'll move on that point. We're going to show you some more video here. We learned that the Muslim scholars who were kicked off of the U.S. Airways flight last year, they may not be suing just the airline. We're hearing they may sue some of the passengers who informed the airport that they felt these men were doing something suspicious. The 6 scholars say they were only praying in the terminal, and if they do decide to take the passengers to court, it will only be those that they felt were giving false information to airport security.
You know, I was doing a media interview at the time when I first heard about this. The case was released, and they all of a sudden it was apparent that they identified the passengers as being one of the people being sued, the defendants. And I was just, my knee-jerk response was, I will do everything possible as a Muslim to help them, because you cannot start, if you want, I mean, if their goal is to educate America and say that we deserve the same rights as everybody else, I agree with that goal. I'm a civil libertarian. I believe that our rights, though, are based on 2 very important pillars. One is the Constitution and our Bill of Rights, but the other is the tenor of our relationship with the greater American community. If we start to sue passengers who simply are not trained in police response and identifying
and
things,
they may be, it may be ignorance, and they may be scared.
Exactly. So how do you make them less fearful? You sue them so that when they come on an airplane and they see something, they're going to then be afraid, oh, wait a minute, is this going to cost me $50,000 to retain an attorney if I cite something that is of fear to me and I don't know what to do with? And the pilot is going to have to make decisions within 5 minutes of takeoff and may not be able to? I mean, that's not going to help the war on terror.
Before we take a break, Dr. Jasser, can you explain what the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, of which you're the president, is all about? What are you trying to accomplish?
Basically, a small group of us formed it in the vision of a think tank that is directed to 2 primary ideologies, creating that within the Islamic consciousness. One is the separation of religion and politics, and the second is the primary allegiance to the Citizenship Pledge, in that we will defend our country against all enemies, and that our faith should stay at home. It is inspirational to us. We believe in the Quran and the Hadith, or the example of the Prophet, but it is something that just belongs at home. Government should be based on natural law and humanistic argumentation, not based on a government where the Quran is the Constitution. That is what conflicts between the Islamists and America.
Well put. We're back with Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. Back in a moment, talking about Muslim extremism. Dr. Zuhdi Jasser is the president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. This is a voice that you probably out there have been wondering, where's it been? Strongly urging Muslims to rise up and say, this extremism is craziness, it's insane.
Yep, I mean, there's no doubt that it has been too quiet, in that we have allowed organizations that simply do condemnation of terror as a footnote or as a 3rd and 4th priority. I mean, they have to understand that the only reason you're interested, or any of the media is interested, is because of terrorism. So you respond with an equal and opposite reaction to that energy. You don't respond to all of this victimization agenda, which actually certainly America wants to preserve, but it's not going to answer their question, which is, how do you as Muslims help us in the front line against terrorism?
Let's